Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my absolute pleasure to have with us a local upstate New York filmmaker, Michael Flores. In addition to being a filmmaker, Michael's also an actor, teacher, and a husband. He is here to talk about his latest film project, Dogs on the Sendero. And with that, Michael, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation for some time now.
Yeah, likewise.
And I got to tell you how I even came across the film. I cannot credit myself for being a really smooth sleuth. My wife saw a piece that I think it was an interview you did on WKTV or an article on an interview you did with WKTV about Dogs on the Sendero. She pointed it out to me. I immediately purchased the movie. I saw it and I said, I got to reach out to Michael and see if he wants to be on the podcast. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that that WKTV still has some reach.
Yes, it does. And that's our go-to local news channel. And we wake up with that every morning, and I'm thankful because they had the article about the interview about the movie, and I'm really excited to get into the filmmaking piece with you, the actual movie, what it's about. So whenever you're ready, I've got some questions for you.
Let's go.
All right. First of all, this is your debut film, am I correct?
My debut feature film, yeah.
Yeah, debut. Okay. So tell our audience about Dogs on the Sendero. What inspired its creation, and what is the film about? And also, what does Sendero mean?
So Sendero is Spanish for path, or it could mean trail, but usually just path. Basically the idea for Sendero came along when it was at the beginning of COVID, and I ended up going back to school. I decided I was going to go back and get my master's because I just didn't know if the film industry was going to bounce back from everything. In a lot of ways, it still is. It's still pretty dormant. It's not nearly as busy as it used to be, but it is starting to finally bounce back. But in any case, I had a project that I needed to do, and I wanted to write a script that I could potentially make myself. I didn't want to just write another script that I was going to try to sell or, put on a shelf and say, maybe one of these days. I wanted to make something that was feasible for me and a very small crew. So the first thing that I did was I made a list of all the things that I had for free or next to free that were at my disposal. I own the RV. Rosie's my dog. I started out as an actor, so I felt comfortable enough to stand both in front and behind the camera. And so that's one less person I have to pay. I don't have to pay myself. And it just kind of started growing from there. I also had a lot of locations, like the school. I had a couple of schools that we could use. So I was like, okay, what can we do at a school, but also create turn into some kind of road movie? And the original inspiration that kind of grew from was my wife is actually an elementary school teacher, and she taught at Remington Elementary in Ilion, New York. And Remington Elementary is no more. They merged with another school, Fisher Elementary in Mohawk, where she teaches now. And the idea for that was sound. So many of these small towns in upstate New York, you can't tell where one ends and the other one begins, but they all have, their own school system. Yep. And the idea of merging two of those together, that sounds like a good idea. It's a good way to save money. It's a good way to, kind of just compress everything. But unfortunately, that whole process was handled extremely poorly. And the one group of people that should have been consulted the most, the faculty, just really weren't. It was just basically like, here's your marching orders. This is what we're going to do. And so I actually did write, I started when that whole thing happened, I did start a script based on, and that was years ago. And it was really just kind of like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 pages. And it was just kind of developing this idea and this character. And I do that pretty often when it comes to screenwriting. I'll have an idea for a scene and I just write it down because you never know what I could use that for, what puzzle that's eventually going to fit into. And so I, excuse me, again, I was just kind of going back through things and I had this idea and I said, I think there's something here. Let's continue going with this. And from there, I was basically just kind of asking myself what I would do if my wife was killed in a school shooting. And I honestly think that I probably would hit the road in Hannah and I may never come back. I may just stay gone because I don't know if I'd want to come back. And so I just kind of started asking myself those questions. And eventually the story kind of started taking roots, it started developing. And when I was looking into the idea of a school shooting, a lot of people tried to steer me away from that. We don't want to talk about that in this country. It's a very real thing. This film is as American as you can get. A school shooting takes place. A guy hits the road in an RV going cross country. These are things that you can't. Sure, you can caravan, across Europe and stuff, but it's not the same.
No.
So, and the more kind of pushback I got from that, the more I was like, no, I think we need to further keep exploring this. And, to clarify to your listeners, we don't actually see a school shooting in the film. There isn't, this isn't like a gory movie by any means.
No.
Because it's not really about the shooting itself. It's about the aftermath. And that's really what I started exploring, is trying to talk to and meet people who went through the aftermath of such like mass killings or gun violence, because those bullets, metaphorically hit more than the people that, more than the victims that they've taken away from us. Everyone who was associated with those people is injured for life.
Yeah.
Because, grief never goes away. In one way or another, it finds a way of finding you.
Yeah.
And so, it just, again, it just kind of grew from there. Me asking those questions to myself, me kind of, doing further research into what these other people are going through. And, that idea of getting in the RV and kind of running away, that is a way of dealing with grief. It might not be the healthiest way, but it is one way of processing that, of like getting away from everything that reminds you of that person you've lost.
Michael, if you look at movement and motion, that's healing for a lot of different people. I know we talked in our, email correspondence. I had mentioned Neil Peart and how his path was very influential to me after two very significant losses in his life. And you had mentioned that you had come across his book after you finished the script for Dogs on the Sendero. And you knew you were on the right track. So what was it about Peart's path that told you were on the right track with where you were going with the movie?
There were, it was Neil Peart, and there was, oh God, I can't remember the other one. It was another book about a gentleman who traveled with his dog. And those came recommended to me after I had shown the script to some of my own mentors and friends. And, all these recommendations started coming in. And that was one of them. And I didn't end up reading the entire thing. I need to pick it back up and finish it. But there was just that, in general, kind of that idea of, excuse me. Sorry, I'm phlegmy this morning.
That's okay.
He was hitting the road and trying to figure out what was left of himself, of, figuring out, what was left of him. And I think in many ways he was really kind of going on that same kind of journey that Soul is in
Yes.
our film. You like searching for answers. It's really just kind of wayfinding, right? You're hitting the open seas and trying to see what's left out there for you.
One of the things that resonated with Soul's journey and with Neil Peart's journey, Neil Peart in his book Ghostwriter travels on the healing road. If this is on page 10, it tells you how much, Mikey, I've read the book. So,
Yeah.
that tells you how much I've read it. But he said he left on his road trip a year and a day after his daughter Selena died in a car accident. And he said he left to find out what kind of a person he wanted to be and what kind of a world he wanted to live in. And I think Soul left for the same reasons. And also it was a road trip that he and Gina had planned. They were going to do this when they got the RV. So not only did I see it as a tribute to Gina, but I saw it as an activity for him trying to find himself, to re-engage with community, and try to figure out what kind of world am I going to live in without Gina.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head.
And you mentioned grief is always going to find us. Grief doesn't go in stages. Grief, I'm going to remember the people I've lost in my life, the entirety of my life, depending on what's going on in my life. Yeah. It's a circular journey. It's always going to surface depending on what's going on in the moment. And we need to be able to honor that as much as we do the happy moments.
Sure. Yeah. My friend Austin Green, who plays Joe in the film, he talks about grief as not something necessarily to overcome, but basically it's something to, as you said, to honor and to process, and trying to find proper ways of doing so. And I think for me, it's within my art itself. We unfortunately lost Rosie back in April, and honestly, it's been the hardest thing I've ever had to go through in my life. And because for all intent and purposes, she was my daughter.
Yeah.
So I know exactly what Neil Peart's going through. Not to trivialize that in any way, but I and that grief rears its head at the most inappropriate times. Yeah, it comes when you want it to, right? When you're sitting and doing nothing. But since then, I've been, I've taken that and I've poured that into new scripts and ideas. That processing, that feeling, that's coming to me in other stories, other ways and characters. And I'm sure once those other films come out and somebody looks at my catalog to be like, okay, they'll be able to come up with a timeline. Okay, this is when he did this. This is when he lost this person. This is when this happened to him. And
Yep. Well, I mean, too, creativity is a great vehicle for working through any challenges in our lives, whether it's writing, whether it's filmmaking, whether it's art. The creative arts can't be understated when it comes to working through challenge. So I'm just looking forward to more scripts. I'm looking forward to just more movies from you. So,
thank you.
And also, for those of you who are Zoom, Michael's name on his screen is Mikey. Now, he told me I can call him either Mikey or Michael, depending on what's going on. So if you hear me alternate between Mikey and Michael, I got advance permission from my guest contributor to do that. So
my old man is Big Mike. I've been Mikey all my life.
All right. Well,
all my friends call me Mikey.
All right. Well, good. Like I said before recording, hopefully if I haven't alienated you during the podcast, hopefully we can be friends. So
definitely.
So, but anyway, Mikey, just ask you. The one thing I wanted to mention to you. You mentioned school shootings. You're right. This has become so normalized. Mass shootings have become so normalized in the society. We need to talk about it. I was part of after Stoneman Douglas, and it was in March 5th, 2018. We had an active shooter threat at Utica. It was on Utica College.
I remember that.
Yeah. And I was in lockdown with 22 of my students.
Yikes.
And fortunately, it was just an active shooter threat. There were no shots fired, but I began to have empathy for those teachers and everything who'd been in lockdown with their students. And I remember thinking that, and I was probably in my 60s at the time, I was thinking, hell, I've lived my life. If anybody comes after one of my students, I'm going to take a bullet.
Mm.
Um,
Wow, good on you.
yeah, and because I kind of figured, they have their whole lives ahead of them. I've lived a good portion of mine, and because of my own challenges, we talked about this, with the loss of my daughter, those
Hmm.
those students became an extended part of my family. So if you were going to hurt them, you're hurting my family. So I was going to do whatever I needed to do to protect them. And if that meant sacrificing my life in the process, I was going to do that. I am glad I haven't been in that situation since, but if the same circumstances occurred, which I hope they never do, I would do the same thing.
Seeing right there, like your passion, not just for education, but for your students as individuals, that was kind of my kind of guiding light for the character of Gina. Like that's who she is or was. And that's who, I mean, teaching, it's not something that somebody just kind of says, okay, I'm going to do this. Teachers are usually filled with some kind of desire or passion to,
Yeah.
want to spread education, to want to enlighten students, to want to make a better world through teaching these youngsters. And that was something I kept exploring, and I really wanted to keep as my kind of North Star because, you know, too often nowadays, like faculty is asked to go above and beyond
Yeah.
for too many things. You're required to not only be a teacher, to be a parent, to in some cases be a grandparent, to be a therapist, and now to be a security guard. And that's a lot on a teacher's shoulders, on any individual's shoulders. And education is this thing. It's supposed to be this kind of hand in hand process where you are working alongside parents. You will, in the younger stages, you're working alongside parents to ensure that your child is successful in education, so that when they get to college, they are fully prepared to take on their education on their own. They know exactly what to do. And that's not what's happening anymore. It's really just the parents say, this is your job to teach my kid. And it's like, well, yes, but we're supposed to do this together to ensure that your kid, I can't be at home making sure your kid's doing homework.
Yeah.
And it's just sadly, I don't know when the flip or the change happened where teachers were just kind of seen as another, almost like just service that people were paying for. And if a student fails, it's not always the teacher's fault. And there's actually a line in the film where Saul says, I only have your kid until that bell rings. That's it. We can do all we can to make sure that these kids succeed, but we can't do everything. And, but I really wanted to emphasize that passion in these characters to want to try. And in Saul's journey, when he hits the road, that's subconsciously, he already has that going on. He
Yep.
just doesn't know it yet.
Yep.
And so that's when he meets some of these characters on the road, like Jamie, and he's just like
Yes.
immediately snaps right into teacher mode
Yep.
without, hesitation at all. He doesn't know he's doing this. He's just been bred to do it. Like he's there now. He is a
Yeah.
teacher and he's never going to stop.
Well, and the other thing, and I think, as I
Mm.
was watching it, you mentioned the interaction with Jamie and the other characters on the road, especially what I saw with Jamie was that I could see Gina's light and passion coming through Saul, but Saul didn't know that yet.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
but Gina was working right through Saul to reach out to Jamie and help her achieve her greatest potential. Um, and I think that's the other part is that there's also that sacred side, and the other part with serendipity and signs and grief integration is that the essence of our loved ones works through us so that we can make a difference in the world. And then in that way, Mikey, they're never that far away. They're with us. We're
Yeah.
moving forward with them in grief. And I was watching that and smiling. I said, boy, I bet you he doesn't even know he's doing this.
Yeah.
And her light was obviously coming through the character Saul. So, um, And yeah, I mean, it's the other thing. I tell my students, I said, look, I respect that this is your primary role, but I'm also going to respect other categories in your life. If you're
Hmm.
struggling, you've got personal issues going on, you've got a death in the family, you've got illness. I want to work with you, and I know life gets in the way. It's gotten in the way for me. Um, but you got to let me know so that we can work through life together.
Hmm. For sure.
So, but yeah, I think too much expectations placed on the teachers. Well, here, fix them. We can't. We can't. We're not home with them. So, we can only do what we can do.
Yeah. And when we started kind of researching these instances, these school shootings, we actually were privy to a lot of emails where basically, a lot of these students, they got, this horrible thing happened, and everybody immediately thought of the kids, rightfully so, but absolutely no one was thinking about the teachers who went through the same exact ordeal as these children went through. And so, some of these schools, they got, depending on when this thing happened, they got months off. Some of them took the entire year off. It was just done for. The students, some of the faculty were required to come back to like as little as 2 days later.
Oh,
2 days later, it's like, okay, you had your grieving time. It's time to get back to work. And there was a common phrase that we found echoed in all of these emails. It's time to get back to business as usual. That was like the common phrase. And that's not only is it insensitive, but it kind of really shows you how it like the higher ups really think of schools now business. It's time to get back to business as usual. These they're not kids, they're just a head count.
yeah.
It's really, really sad.
Well, it feeds into the old myth about 3 days bereavement leave. That after 3 days, you get bereavement leave, and you come back to work, and everything, proceeds as normal. Well, no, grief changes, the loss changes the landscape of
Hmm.
our lives. We have to permanently readjust. We have to take a look. Every loss, I believe, causes us, begs us to reevaluate our priorities, our
Hmm.
values, and say, okay, what kind of a world am I going to live in? We make that decision, I think, every time that we experience a loss. And by the way, too, my condolences for the loss of Rosie.
Thank you.
I've transitioned 7 pets to Rainbow Bridge, and I know what value they had in my life, particularly two of my daughter's favorite cats who were a joy to me and an inspiration to me and helped me, and especially one of my cats, Bootsy, who just basically kept me moving in the initial phases after my daughter's death. So I I know the significance, and that pet loss should never be disenfranchised. It's as significant as any other loss that we experience.
Oh, I agree. And I do. Yeah, I struggle with talking about it because of that. I don't want to make light of anybody else's loss or anything. um when John Proudstar, who plays my father in the film, he sadly recently lost his grandson.
Oh,
And shortly after that is when we lost Rosie. And I was trying to comfort him through that, and he was doing the same with me and Rosie. And I was just trying to say, this is so nice of you. I really appreciate all this, but I can't even imagine what you're going through. And he was the one who basically said, you're going through the same thing that I am. And that I shouldn't feel bad about it, but just forgive me. Yeah.
Mikey, I facilitate a grief support group, and one of the things I tell the participants is that crying is allowed, should never be apologized for. We have plenty of tissues, and the flood insurance is paid, so just let her go.
Well, um, to the thought that we were just talking about with Soul doing things without even realizing he's doing them. Rosie was such a brilliant animal. She was so incredibly empathetic and just smart. Like training her took so little effort. And that's why I felt so comfortable doing this project. I would not have even attempted to do something of this magnitude with any other animal, regardless of if they were an animal actor or not. Because I've worked with other animal actors before, and they're fine, they're good, but they're still animals, so it could be unpredictable. But with Rosie, because I knew her routine, and I was so familiar with everything about her because I'm her daddy. I knew what to expect. But we got her little brother shortly before we lost Rosie, and I see her in him. And it's weird because he, like through the course of like training him, it was easy, and not because he's as smart as Rosie. He's a silly boy, but because Rosie was showing him what to do.
Yeah.
And she taught him more than I ever could. Like it was like a form of like animal study, just watching them and watching her basically say, no, this is where we pee-pee.
Yeah. This is how you make my human's life easier.
Yeah.
It's funny. When Bootsy, who was Janine's favorite cat, my daughter Janine's favorite cat, he became my cat after she died. And because the last 6 months of his life, we had acquired a couple of other cats, and one of them was Zoe, a very playful black cat. And I could swear, Mikey, that for the last 6 months of Bootsy's life, he was showing her, here's how you treat my human. This is what he relinquished my lap. He let her take my lap over. It was almost like the rite of passage, so that when Bootsy transitioned, Zoe was ready to take her place. And I think animals are so energy sensitive, and the teachings of animals, they just have so many spiritual teachings that are attached to them. We can learn a lot as human beings from watching how our animals treat each other, how they communicate with each other. But I could have sworn that the last 6 months of Bootsy's life, he was orienting Zoe. He goes, here's how you take care of my human. And then Zoe became I became Zoe's human.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, and I learned just as much from Rosie as I was teaching her, for sure.
And John had a good point. He said, yeah, you can sit with my worst pain because you know what your worst pain is. And I tell individuals, just because my worst pain is the death of my daughter shouldn't trivialize your worst pain, shouldn't make it seem less in magnitude. Because I can tap into the pain of my worst tragedy and tap into the pain of yours, because that pain is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we can align.
Certainly, yeah.
Pets are great. They just provide so much unconditional love. And like I said, especially if you don't have children, they become your children.
Yeah. Rosie really was. The role that she plays in this film, she is Soul's kind of spirit guide. And I firmly believe that she's going to be my alebrije when I leave this world. An alebrije, if you're not familiar, is a have you ever seen Coco?
Yes,
Disney cartoon. So the colorful animals in the afterlife that guide us across the Marigold Bridge. That's going to be Rosie for me.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe we'll see our pets in the afterlife. I believe I'll see every pet that I ever transitioned. They'll be waiting for me along with those other individuals that I care about. Maybe a few spirit guides I don't even know about.
Yeah.
There were so many moments that Sal experienced, so many signs and moments of serendipity in the movie. I found it to be really empowering, just watching all of this unfold. From your perspective, how can embracing those moments of signs and serendipity help us transform and integrate grief after traumatic loss?
It's a great question. What I've learned from dealing with loss and grief is I observed a lot of people before tackling this idea in the script. And I noticed that just part of them is gone. Watching people who have lost somebody, it seems like they're in the moment, but they're not. They got like one foot somewhere else. And that was something that I observed a lot of. And I wanted to figure out a way to kind of capture that idea. I think for me, certainly, I've been more in the moment than ever. Since losing Rosie, I'll do screen purges where I don't, like, I'll go a whole weekend without even looking at my phone. I'm just trying to be present, doing things that don't involve always having a camera or a phone around or anything like that. And it's really about recognition, right? Because like even my whole writing process is like maybe 20% is actual writing. And that's what a lot of young writers don't understand. You can't just sit in front of your computer and just type. It's not going to come to you. You have to live. Mark Twain said, I believe the quote was something like, to recognize what's in your own backyard before venturing elsewhere.
Mhm.
And that's what I wanted to do. And so, like, a lot of these, the symbolism in the film or the recognition that Saul goes through, those were kind of things that I was kind of going through just thinking about this script. And you have to get out and you have to experience the world because you're exercising your brain. You're exercising your personality. And I tell every young person, travel while you're young. That's the time to do it. You got to be able
Yes.
to step outside of your own shoes and live life through somebody else's lens before you can even bother to start trying to, write that story.
Mhm.
And so a lot of these moments in the film came from, going on bike rides, just walks. I live out in the middle of nowhere. So, I'm able to just go on long walks, walking and talking with my wife, going outside and playing with the dogs. It's just, it's like you're putting that idea on the back burner and you're letting it simmer. And in those moments, you're exercising, your brain or, you're getting the blood flowing and it'll just pop and it'll just come to you. And so it's not just the idea of what the recognition is, it's the moment when you have that recognition.
Yep.
And that's, a lot of what Saul goes through is really things that I've gone through on my own personal journey. I don't think I'm ruining anything by speaking about this moment in the film, but when Saul finds his eagle feather, that actually happened to me. That scene is almost like a direct um, kind of translation from that moment that actually happened in my life. I had just moved here to upstate New York from Los Angeles. And, I was really trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I was pretty lost. I was working with a couple of, local boutique production houses and local government. And I was really trying to get, this is before all the tax incentives in New York. And I was really trying to kind of spur that along. The writing was on the wall as far as everything making a mass exodus from California. And so, and there was rumor about changes in New York. So I thought, okay, this is kind of the perfect time to move up here. My wife is from here and it felt right. And we were trying to bring productions here, but nothing was really going. And, the money was running short. I just
Mhm.
I didn't know what I was going to do next. And I was really searching for answers. And it was July 4th. And we went on this long walk. There's a big creek that runs through my property. And you can take this long, like hour-long walk. It's like an hour there, hour back. And it leads to this nice little waterfall. And we were walking with friends. And I was just kind of dragging my heels, dragging my feet. And everybody's walking in front of me. My wife is being silly and trying to cheer me up. But I just can't get out of my own head. I'm just stressing. And I right before me, an eagle feather landed right at my feet. And I recognized it immediately. It's not the traditional kind of Hollywood eagle feather that we used. We use that one because that's the most recognizable, the white feather with the black tip.
Yep.
It was one of the, inner wings, but I knew immediately or like what I was looking at. And I burst into tears. That's a story that's been passed down for ages. There's a lot of Native American tribes that believe in the story of one finding their eagle feather. Basically, the eagle is our navigator. So when the eagle leaves you a feather, that's basically just symbolism that you're on the right path.
Yes.
You're doing the right thing. Keep moving forward.
Yep.
So it's just validation, really, is what it is. And there's been, stories about people finding eagle feathers. I've heard them all my life, and I never found one. That was the first time that it happened to me. And like I had a cousin who found one in a mailbox. And but they always seem to come in those moments when you're questioning everything.
Yes.
And so when I found mine, I'm like crying. But it's like, what the hell's wrong with it? You don't understand what this means.
No.
So from there on, I didn't look back. I didn't stress anymore because I knew I was doing the right thing.
Yeah, it's like don't doubt your path.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of, the whole spirit of this project, of this film, is sticking to your path, recognizing the path that we're on, and to keep moving forward.
Those kind of stories just really just resonate with me. I mean, I just love hearing stories like that because when we experience something as a sign or a message from beyond, it's always a product of what is going on with us in the present moment. We're either thinking of a lost loved one, we're questioning our own path, our own choices, we're asking for some type of a sign to tell us that we're on the right path or we have to change path. And it's all about what we're thinking about in the moment, what's going on in the moment that makes that significant. For everybody, the eagle feather might have different meanings for different people,
Mhm.
depending on what's going on with them or depending on how they interpret that sighting. But for you, it had its own unique meaning, and yeah, you were on the right path. And with this whole
Yeah.
movie, you were on the right path.
Yeah, and that's why we called it Sendero. That was the original title, was just Sendero.
Hmm.
The distributor we went with, they had some recommendations for some title changes, and their reasoning was valid. I think there's a poetry to just simple one-word title, Sendero.
Yep.
But their argument was that people would think it was a foreign language film, and we would lose audience because of that. And so Dogs on the Sendero was kind of a compromise. They had a bunch of different titles that they wanted to go with that were just not good. But Dogs on the Sendero has poetry in that title as well, because Soul, Hannah, and Rosie, they're a pack.
Yep.
And so they're on this the path together. So
And Hannah's your actual RV, correct?
I'm sitting in her now. This is
That's what I thought. I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, look, I recognize the bed. You and Rosie
Yep.
shared that bed throughout the movie." Yeah, I thought that was you were in Hannah. That's exactly where I thought you were.
Yeah. This is part of my chores today. I got to get her ready for winter storage.
Well, I just appreciate the fact that we've got setting. We've got the actual RV that you're our actual RV in the movie, and it's part of the podcast. So I appreciate that. So one of the things you mentioned, I think, in the movie, or one of the things that you mentioned, I think maybe in the KTV interview, was that Saul, in the process of trying to find himself through travel, with Hannah, with Rosie, he gets in touch with his mestizo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and
Yes.
Native American roots. Mestizo, is that Hispanic?
So mestizo is likened to the term mulatto. So it's mestizo is of mixed race. A mestizo is a person who is Native American and Hispanic.
Okay. So why is reaffirming our cultural identity? How does that help us navigate loss and life-altering challenges? What did Saul discover about about getting in touch with those roots that helped him transform his grief?
I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I can say as we get older, we start looking back on who we are and where we come from. For me, I was, I've grown up with a lot of different traditions and stories of, this heritage, and there are always things that stay with me, and it's almost something that I fall back on, when something happens. Or I think Catholics do this too, right? They always say, "Oh, it happens in threes," and that's actually Gina's. Gina, does Gina say that or her mother? It was Saul's mother because she's Hispanic, and that's a traditional like Catholic thing. It
Yeah.
comes in threes. So that's kind of something that we all do in one way or another, depending on what our cultural heritage is. But for me, we grew up with all these Native American stories. I'm Yaqui. But we grew up actually around a lot of different tribes and the funny thing is I don't know a ton about my Yaqui heritage. I actually know more about being around Creek Indians, Pueblo Indians, um, Cherokee, Choctaw, because we just moved around a lot. And my grandfather himself was kind of he wasn't necessarily in touch with a lot of his original lineage either, because it was kind of the same story. He didn't really know his background. He actually spent the first 2 years of his life on a Oneida reservation in Wisconsin. So, and it wasn't even something we found out about until after he died. We like to generalize Native American culture, which is stupid, but because I say this, if you were to go to Europe, let's just say Western Europe, which you can fit into North America several times over, right?
Yep.
You wouldn't go to Europe and say, you wouldn't go to Germany and say, why aren't they speaking French? Even though they're like right next to each other. They're two different peoples, right? And in some cases, we go to different countries in Europe. It takes as long to get from one country to the other as it takes for us to get from one state to the other. So that's kind of expected when we go to Europe. But for some reason, when the Europeans came here, they thought all these brown guys are the same. Yeah. And so they tried to mush those cultures together. And the truth is, there's some similarities, but they're not the same. They're not the same at all. And, unfortunately, there's still a failure to recognize that. And I'm kind of, I digress here and I apologize. But back to the original question, for me, relying on it brings comfort, if anything else. Even if it's just, in times of any kind of hardship or, a lot of these traditions and leanings are very community oriented.
Yes.
And so, that it brings me back to my community of where I feel at home.
And that was a consistent message throughout the movie, I think, was the importance of community and getting through any challenge. Just the importance of community in general, to just have that kind of comradeship, because, we can't exist in a vacuum. We need each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we know it or not, we need each other.
For sure. Yeah. And it takes empathy. And that's something that teachers have in spades.
Oh, yeah.
And, going back to the idea of, having this school shooting element, there was some people who were like, well, why don't you have her die from like cancer or something? I'm like, no, why? No, we're not going to do that. That's not the story. And I didn't want to make this a political piece. That's not what this film is. Like, Soul's not going around the country. He's not Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, right? That movie's been made. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about making a statement on, if I was going to make a statement about anything with this film, it's about the treatment or mistreatment of teachers.
Yeah.
And how important they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that came out very loud and clear in the movie in terms of the importance of treating our teachers well, having them being part of the solution. And when you mentioned like, yeah, well, we'll go back to work in 2 days after a traumatic event. I mean, geez, you wait about 72 hours and then you debrief everybody first before you even decide whether or not they're ready to go back to school. So, and it's just, working for the state, I can, for 27 years, I had some good immediate supervisors, but I had some bureaucrats who honestly were just out of touch with what was going on with, what the line staff were doing. And that was as frustrating for me, I think, and is somebody I believe who's teaching in education is probably, suffering through that same bureaucratic dance and just frustrated because their needs aren't being met or their needs aren't even being acknowledged or there's no
Yeah.
alignment. So I,
Yeah.
but yeah, school shootings are very real. I mean, if you're a teacher now, that's something that's always in the back of your head. When we had the threat of an active shooter, we were looking over our shoulders for quite a while because once it happens once, that safety net is cracked. It can happen again. And so,
Hmm.
but the college at the time was Utica College. They took all kinds of safety precautions, safety measures to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, we haven't had that again, but doesn't mean it couldn't happen. Absolutely not. It could.
Well, I mean, we like to say like, oh, that would never happen here. This is exactly the kind of place that would happen.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Look at Sandy Hook.
Yeah, yeah.
It's sad. There's no comfort. There's no security anywhere. You can't say, well, I live in, Mayberry. It'll never happen here. But, these are the kind of places that these things keep happening to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and until we acknowledge it, as a real threat, until we acknowledge it as something that needs to be dealt with, we're going to keep experiencing what we're experiencing.
My first lockdown drill that I had to go through as a teacher, I was like, when I wrote the film, I was kind of, doing these things from the perspective of my wife because she has done it several times. And a couple of times were very real.
Mm-hmm.
One instance was, I don't know if you remember, it was years ago. There was a guy he started an Alien and he went to Herkimer and he was just shooting people. He shot up that barber shop. And she was in lockdown for that. And that was like very real and very scary because where he started was pretty close to her school and they didn't know where he was going next. So I was, writing these things really from her perspective. But then when I first went through it myself, just through the drill, it was so macabre. It was just the strangest feeling because these kids were just like, yeah, it's just another day.
Mm-hmm.
They, it didn't faze them at all. They knew exactly what to do. They didn't really care. They weren't, I don't know. It was just so normal for them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. For me, it was weird because, I was just like, just overthinking everything and thinking like, oh my God, these poor kids, what they have to go through. And they were just like, ho hum. Well, at least we're out of class for now. They weren't really thinking about the ramifications of what this whole thing means in the world that they live in now.
No. And I mean, the thing is, it's that it's become normalized that, school shootings have become a normal part of what we expect in society, and it shouldn't be. I mean, I remember my granddaughter when she was 2 years old, they were doing lockdown drills in preschool.
Yeah.
When I grew up, we had our issues, nothing like this.
Yeah. You guys had the Cold War. Like
Yeah.
get under your desk, put your ears to your knees.
Yeah,
like that was gonna save you from a nuke.
Yeah. Or Orson Welles, that was back in the 30s. That was before my time, War of the Worlds and all that. Where where he just put everybody through a nuclear bomb drill, and it ended up being one big hoax. But we had different issues then. I mean, we had issues of safety back then, but nothing like now. Nothing like now. So, and the fact that our children and teachers are going through this is alarming. And the fact that it's been normalized is even more alarming. So, but I've got a couple other questions to ask you. I could probably sit and talk with you for about another hour or two, but I know you got some chores to do for your wife, so I don't want to get on her crap list. For preventing you from doing what you got to do. So, but if you could leave our listeners, our audience, with one ultimate takeaway, one ultimate teaching from Dogs on the Sendero, what would you want them to take away, Mikey?
We've had such an incredible response to this film. It's been amazing, and it's something that I did not anticipate or expect, and I'm so thankful. But I've had so many encounters with people who have either written me or have sought me out, or just actually yesterday, I just somebody stopped me as I was going into Harbor Freight and told me how this film has resonated with them. how they identified with one character or another, and how many people are going through something similar that Saul is going through, and how this kind of spoke to them and really made them feel better, that somebody else recognizes what they're going through. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, is not only to recognize, to stop and recognize your own path that you're going on, but to realize that you might be on that path with someone else,
Yes.
or their path might be running parallel to yours. And I think just to be more empathetic to others. And, there's such a disconnect in this world. We were constantly putting this between us, and we're
Yes.
building a wall between us. And I stop that.
Yeah, let's just stop.
Yeah. I know that the irony in that, in watching a film on a screen to promote not looking at screen, but that, if anybody's going to take anything away from this film, I hope it's that.
And if people want to purchase Dogs on the Sendero, watch it, contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So right now we're on Amazon, Apple TV Plus, Google Play, YouTube, Fandango at home. Soon we'll be shifting over to some other platforms as well. And if you want to contact me, you can senderomovie@gmail.com. We're also on all the socials, Twitter or X,
Yeah.
Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky. We're on that one too. So whatever you roll with, you can find us on there. Just look up Dogs on the Sendero, or you can find me, Michael Flores. I think there's a few Michael Floreses out there, so you might have to look.
Yeah, when I searched, there were a bunch.
Yeah.
So I just said, well, I'll just ask you when I see how to contact you, so that I'm not ringing up the wrong Michael Flores. So,
Yeah.
So, but Mikey, thank you so much for spending time with me today, and in our audience. I enjoyed our conversation. I hope we can do it again in the future. But for my audience, buy Dogs on the Sendero, rent it, watch it more than once, twice, three times. It has something for everybody. And yes, pay tribute to Rosie.
Yeah.
She was absolutely brilliant in the movie, and
she's the real star.
Yeah, she was. Well, she was a great road companion for you too. So, but again, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.